I'm starting a pretty epic road trip today, from the southern point of Sweden to the northern point. The trip is going to be around 3,000 kilometers, more than 1,800 miles. It's gonna take 12 days, and I'm gonna experience everything from historical sites to some of Sweden's absolutely best views. I'm gonna see the midnight sun above the Arctic Circle, and I'm also gonna explore Europe's last great wilderness. My trip starts in Smygehuk, at the very southern tip of Sweden. More than 200,000 people visit this place every year, mostly in summer because it's pretty cold and miserable in winter. The wind and the seas are pretty rough. Standing at the southern point is a good way to get splashed by waves crashing onto the shore. Fun for the whole family. Anyway, say goodbye to Smygehuk, because now we're moving north. Come to think of it, north is the only way we can go from here. I started my journey pretty late in the evening, so I'm spending my first night here outside of Båstad along the Italian road. No, it doesn't go to Italy. I actually don't know why it's called the Italian road. I'll spend the night here in the car, which might actually be a bit stupid because it's probably gonna be really cramped, but I didn't want to put up a tent. As long as you're parking legally, you're allowed to sleep in the car in most places in Sweden, so I don't have to be all that worried about being woken up in the middle of a night by an angry policeman. Good morning! Such lovely Swedish summer weather to wake up to, but that doesn't matter because now we're going to Hovs hallar. Close to the towns of Båstad and Treriksröset, famous as getaway spots for the rich and famous, you find Hovs hallar. Hovs hallar is a nature preserve on the southwestern coast, filled with dramatic rock formations. And fun fact, you know the famous chess scene against death in the movie The Seventh Seal? Well, it was recorded here. It's a really popular area for swimming, climbing, or just enjoying the scenery. Except today because it's cold and rainy. Oh well, let's move on. There's a lot of amazing places to visit along the west coast. Mölle, where you can see the fantastic sculpture Nimis, for example, or Halmstad or Tylösand, and many other places. And of course Gothenburg, Sweden's second biggest city. But I wanted to see Marstrand instead, just north of Gothenburg. It's a beautiful town and a very popular tourist destination. And most importantly, this is where you find Carlsten fortress. It was built in 1658 to protect against the Danes, but then the Danes captured it in 1677. The Swedes got it back, presumably by paying an exorbitant amount of ransom money, but then the Danes captured it again in 1719. Sweden did get it back again, and it has been Swedish ever since, but I assume that they had to pay another exorbitant amount of money the second time. Dansk jävlar! Smygehuk lies 1.5 hours north of Marstrand, and it's a famous tourist destination in Sweden, especially among sailing people. The most famous part of Smygehuk is the jetty, filled with touristy bars and restaurants. And tourists. Quite a few tourists, actually. It is a completely gorgeous place though, so it's understandable why so many people flock here. I'm now moving away from the coast and driving inland instead, and one of the stops along the way is the rock carvings at Tanum. The oldest rock carvings here are 3,000 years old, and the place has been a UNESCO World Heritage Site since 1994. And there's a lot more than just these rock carvings here. There's a museum, a hiking trail, and ancient burial mounds. Tanum is a great place to visit if you want to get a look into Scandinavia in the Bronze Age. I'm not gonna comment on the dongs that those stick figures have. I'm not that immature. Let's make a quick stop in the small town of Grums in the province of Värmland. Around 5,000 people live here, and it's a town that's not really known for all that much. So why am I stopping here? Well, that's because one of the things that Grums is famous for is that it has the highest suicide rate in all of Sweden. There's a lot of socio-economic factors behind that, and there's also a lot of drug use in Grums. So this might not be the happiest stop on my trip, but I just wanted to have a quick look at this pretty unfortunate town. No car camping for me today. It's been a super long day, so I'm spending the night at a hostel. It'll be good to stretch out in a proper bed today, so I'm ready for another long journey tomorrow. By the way, if you enjoy this content, make sure you like and subscribe while I have some canned ravioli. It really helps me create more videos like this. Anyway, night from Torsby in the province of Värmland. Jag åkte till storstaden Mora. Welcome to the town of Mora in the province of Dalarna. It's famous for Vasaloppet, an annual ski race. The weather is lovely right now, but I'm not gonna spend too much time here. I already made a video all about Vasaloppet, as well as the area around Lake Siljan. Check it out after this video. Anyway, now I need to go see if I can find a river. I've been driving for a long time, but there's still a lot more of Sweden. Sweden is 1,600 kilometers long. It's basically the same distance from the southern point of Sweden to the northern point as from the south of Sweden to Rome. And it's a longer distance than from Tallahassee to Toronto. So while Americans are fond of talking about how big the US states are, Sweden is actually bigger than all but 2 of the American states. Texas is one of them, and of course the other one is Alaska. But Sweden is actually bigger than, for example, California. North of Mora, close to the town of Orsa, you find a canyon called Storstupet. I was actually here in winter a couple of years ago, but I wanted to see it in summer too. Yep, that's pretty magnificent in summer too, but I'm not gonna marvel too long. I have a long way to drive today. I want to get to Östersund and Storsjön. People living in Stockholm sometimes think that it's located in the middle of Sweden, but it's not. This place is called Ytterhogdal, and it's located 400 kilometers north of Stockholm, and it's in the absolute center of Sweden, depending on how you count. If you draw a line between the northern point of Sweden and the southern point, and then you find the intersection between a line that goes east and west, then you end up here. I guess that's actually a pretty debatable way of defining the center, but either way, now I can say that I've been to the center of Sweden. Or at least one of 4 centers of Sweden, depending on how you calculate it. Östersund is a town that lies next to Storsjön, the Great Lake. And in Storsjön you can actually find an ancient beast called Storsjöodjuret, the Great Lake Monster. But I'm not gonna talk more about that beast right now, because I'm making a separate video all about it. If you've ever gone skiing in Sweden, Östersund is also next to Åre, Sweden's most famous ski resort. It's the Alps of Sweden. Pretty pitiful compared to the Alps, but it's what we've got. I've been driving north along the west coast and then inland until I got to Östersund, but now I've moved to the east coast instead. It's not the quickest route, but I really wanted to visit the high coast area as well. The high coast is a UNESCO World Heritage Site that features unique geography that was created when ice receded after the last ice age. And many consider this to be the most beautiful part of Sweden. I'm not sure if that's true, because I'll be heading up to a very special area up north in a couple of days. So I guess we'll see which one is most beautiful. But there's no denying that this is absolutely gorgeous. Yesterday, I actually slept at a hotel in Östersund, but today I'm back to good old car camping again. I think that this spot might not be as good as the last one though. There's toilets and somewhere to throw away trash, but there's a lot of noise. Trains and trucks and cars will be passing by all night. Oh, and can you guess what time it is? It's actually 11 p.m. We're getting close to the Arctic Circle and midnight sun. Welcome to Umeå, the town of birches. I'm not gonna show anything special from here, I'm just filling up gas. So let's move on. Tree Hotel is a collection of completely unique and completely amazing treehouse rooms. It opened in 2010, and the hotel focuses on sustainability and closeness to nature, and completely amazing designs. The cabin, blue cone, bird's nest, and the mirror cube were all built in 2010, and the mirror cube is still my personal favorite out of all of these. Yeah, it's called blue cone even if it's red. I guess that's some kind of humor. The striking UFO room was added in 2011. And the Dragonfly was added soon after that in 2013. The very unimaginatively named 7th room was added in 2016. And then there was a long wait until the latest room, Biosphere, opened in 2022. I'm not staying here tonight though. This is way too expensive for a 3-star Vagabond. I'm moving on to a hostel in Jokkmokk instead. If you want to look at these hotel rooms, you have to pay for a self-guided tour, and the price is 80 Swedish kronor. Personally, I think that it's well worth it. Jokkmokk is a small town in the north of Sweden that's most famous for its winter markets. Well, it's not winter right now, so I can't watch any markets. Or at least not that market. It's also famous for having a central role in the Sami culture, the indigenous people of Sweden, Norway, Finland, and parts of Russia. I've never been to this part of Swedish Lapland, so it's really fascinating to see. But there's actually one more thing that Jokkmokk is famous for. It's close to Sarek. What's Sarek, you ask? Well, it's Europe's last great wilderness. It's a very remote national park and there are no roads leading there. To get to the outskirts of the national park, I had to park my car at C12bron and then walk 16 kilometers until I got to a cabin. And from that cabin, the national park stretches out for days and days to the west. There's very little civilization here. This is undisturbed nature, and it's quite amazing. One of the most iconic views in all of Sweden can be found at the top of Skärfe mountain in Sarek. It's an 8-kilometer hike up the mountain, and at the top you're rewarded with a magnificent view of the Rapa Valley. This is quite possibly one of the most majestic things you can see in Sweden, and I'm so happy I came here. People say that the high coast has the most beautiful nature in Sweden, but I think that that's mostly said by people who haven't been here. I'm continuing north from Sarek, past the town of Gällivare. I thought about making a video about Gällivare or Malmberget or Kiruna, because they're all pretty unique. The towns have moved location, as in the entire towns have moved to make room for mines. And that includes every single person living in these moving towns. But I'm actually not gonna dwell here for too long. I'm just spending the night before I move on to the last part of my journey. Even if I'm not making a video about Malmberget or the moving towns, I still wanted to check one out. This is Malmberget, a small town in the north of Sweden that's moved. Yeah, the entire town has moved. People used to live here just a few years ago, but because of a new mine, everyone had to move. Just a couple of years ago, you could walk around here in a ghost town. But right now it's been sealed off, so yeah, I can just look at it from the outside. And also, it doesn't really look like a ghost town anymore. It's more like a demolition zone. Here's a fun little anecdote. Several years ago I made a video about the Sweden solar system, the largest scale model of the solar system in the world. I filmed most of the planets during a road trip up north, but when I got to Kiruna I sort of forgot something. The terminal shock marks the outer boundaries of the solar system, and you can find a model of it here in Kiruna, outside the Swedish Institute of Space Physics. But that winter when I was here, I totally forgot to come here and film it, so I had to exclude it from the video. But here I am, several years later, but better late than never. Here it is, the terminal shock. Yay! Kiruna is one of the most northern towns in Sweden, and it's famous for its mining and for its church that's actually closed off right now because they're moving it in 2025. Kiruna is also famous for the Ice Hotel, even if that technically lies in Jukkasjärvi, close by, and not in Kiruna itself. There's also a lot of skiing and dog sledding and other winter activities, and in general, it's a hotspot for nature experiences. But even if this is really far up north, it's not Sweden's most northern town. In the far north of Sweden, you find Karesuando, Sweden's most northern town, with the most northern restaurant. Even if you can't really call it a town since it only has 272 people, it's just a village actually. This village has been populated since 1670 and it's had a church since 1816. But there's really not much else to say about Karesuando other than that it lies right at the border to Finland. On the other side of the border is a village called Karesuvanto. And it's absolutely not the same place. I mean, there's one letter that's different in each of the names. Anyway, that's where I'm heading next, because to get to the top of Sweden, I have to travel through Finland for the last bit. This is my accommodation for 2 days in Kilpisjärvi in Finland, and it's by far the most expensive and most luxurious accommodation on this trip. Yeah, I might have splurged just a little bit. I could have slept in the car, but feels good to go out on a big bang or something. I have a kitchen, I have 2 floors, I have everything I could possibly need. So what about the rest of Kilpisjärvi? Kilpisjärvi is a tiny village in the very remote parts of Finnish Lapland. This is the starting point for the last part of my trip to get to Sweden's most northern point. It's been a long journey and it feels a bit surreal to be this close to my goal. But the final trip doesn't start until tomorrow, so let's enjoy the polar day up here, 400 kilometers north of the Arctic Circle. And let's see if I'm gonna be able to get some sleep despite the midnight sun. 11 kilometers from Kilpisjärvi, through the mosquito-infested Mallan Nature Preserve, I finally arrive at a lake and a big yellow concrete blob. This blob is the three-country cairn Treriksröset. At this point, the countries of Sweden, Finland and Norway meet, and it's also the most northern point of Sweden. It's an amazing feeling to be here, but I have to admit that this concrete blob is not the most amazing thing I've seen on this journey. Pretty far from it, actually. But I think that this is it. This was my journey across all of Sweden, from the southern point to the northern point. It's a trip that not many people do, because it takes a lot of time, and it is a bit insane. It might also be questionable whether or not it's worth it to travel all the way up here just to see this concrete blob. But I hope that you enjoyed traveling with me, and I hope that you'll like and subscribe, but most importantly, I hope that you're gonna have a great day. The trip has gone pretty well, 11 days without any major mishaps, until yesterday. You know those outdoor toilets with a small hole at the top where you do your business and then it expands into a huge tank at the bottom. A tank filled with unmentionable things. And you know how people sometimes have a tendency to fumble with their phones, you know, butterfingers? Yep, I dropped my phone straight into the toilet. No way to get it up from down there, so yeah, my shitty phone, pun intended, is now resting in an outhouse somewhere close to Torne Älv.